Another topic here, which has been occupying my mind for quite some time, is the so-called MAF hack. What that is apparently on M52 BMW engines, you can remove the mesh inside the MAF. This one is already right here. Supposedly this will improve airflow because this is a pressure drop across the system, which is hindering maximum airflow. It is a small wire mesh, but still, it's like in your tap faucet also you have this mesh. It's supposed to even the flow, and the myth has it that removing this mesh will increase maximum airflow. However, there is some drawbacks to this, and those are: this mesh supposedly evens the airflow once it enters the MAF. You can see here I have one already modded. This MAF here, you have the coarse plastic webbing, which some say you can remove also, but this will totally mess up the airflow, so this recommended to leave this inside at least. And behind this is this mesh, this plastic cross, which suppose it's there, not when you remove it, nothing falls inside and can damage the sensor. Also recommended to leave this intact. Only remove the fine mesh that's behind the coarse webbing. So this one is modded already. I took it out. What you can do is you can remove, how did I do it? I don't even remember. I think I removed the back cross, and then with a small screwdriver went inside and cut the wire mesh. Or did I remove? Actually, the front piece, you can remove it and put it back. That's how I did it. It was a while ago, so I don't remember exactly. You just have to be really careful not to damage the sensor inside when you do this, because this one is really prone to damage or failure when you touch it with something hard. The MAF sensor has a small wire, heated wire, and you can damage very easily. So be very careful when doing this. So the drawbacks. What are the drawbacks? I was talking about drawbacks. Potential drawbacks is that there may be some uneven flow in certain areas due to the fine mesh removed, which will mean basically you have to retune either your MAF curve or how I did it. I had this installed before, tested it, okay, now I'm testing it again. I'm pretty sure I noticed an improvement on top with the mesh removed. This is the stock one inside with the mesh. So the fuel table you have to adjust again because it will read higher in certain areas, especially on the top end, higher flow, which means your lambda short-term fuel trim values will be off and your fuel trims will be off. So you will have to retune that with the STFT tuning method to get those back in check. And also, of course, you have to retune wide open throttle, lambda, AFR with the wideband to also get that back in check to compensate for this. However, in the end, when logging, we should see an increase in MAF value, kilograms per hour, and also load with the mesh removed. I did run without the mesh for quite some time. I recently put the stock one back on just to test and record data and log. And to me, it feels like it's just, I don't know how to describe it, doesn't rev as, or on top there is some power missing. The log values are also a lot lower with MAF and load. Of course, you can say, yeah, but this is due to the faulty reading of the MAF because the turbulent air is not being smoothed out by the mesh. Okay, that's a theory, but I do have the stock air box set up in here, so I'm not running a cold air intake, which will definitely screw up your readings, or a cone filter that will mess it up. We're only talking about the small mesh, and I've read in many forums, many posts from years ago, sometimes 20 years ago, that this mesh will bring an improvement. So I did run with the stock one for a while now. I'm putting back this one with the mesh removed, and I'll probably have to retune my fuel map again, or the MAF scale, to get that in check. We will see. I just wanted to document it because is it a myth? Is it myth busting? I don't know. In the end, the only way to really find out would be to go on a dyno, exchange them, do a run with the stock one, do a run without, have two maps that are optimized for each version. Of course, if you run the map for the stock one and then you switch it to that, it's going to run, fueling is going to be off. So what I'm trying to do is have two maps tuned for the stock one, which I have now. This one is optimized, the ECU tune on this M52 B25 for the stock MAF. I checked fueling, I did the STFT fueling method. The adaptations are in check within plus minus 1-2%, which is okay on the long-term fuel trim. Also wideband lambda, I measured. It's about 0.9, 0.92 down when you get in the high RPMs on high load. 0.88, 0.87 lambda, which is okay, which correlates to about 12.7, 12.9, 13 AFR, something like this. And I'm going to go back to this one, retune for this one, and then the plan is to eventually test both versions with the optimized maps for each one on a dyno back to back. That's the plan. One now without taking the airbox off. It's not necessary, so we just kind of have to twist it out. This. So what we got here. In comparison, I don't mind my little heat shield. You can see the stock one has the mesh, the fine mesh behind the coarse grid, and this one, the one I had modded already, doesn't have it. It's open, so it still has the coarse one and the backside grid just for protection. I'm leaving it in also. So the only difference here is this thing removed. I mean, you can say what you want, but to me, if this is not a throttle blocker, or how do you call it, inhibitor of flow, then I don't know what is. There must be some kind of pressure drop across this. And then, to me, wide open, you should get more airflow through the MAF or through the intake, thus increasing power. It's gonna run crappy if you don't retune it. That I know already, so I'm gonna throw this one back in, the one without the mesh. This one, just keeping it safe. Always good to have a spare MAF. These things, new, are basically 300-400 euros if you can even get them. I don't even know if they're still available, and used ones cannot find easily, so I always have one spare one in stock just in case. So we're gonna go back with this one and then do more testing and tuning. So that was easy as 1, 2, 3. Have the modded MAF in here now without the net. Switched it real quick, and now I'm just gonna reflash the previous tune, which I had already somewhat optimized for this MAF with this MAF hack, mesh removed, and go from there. All right. Now, what I need to do is reflash another map for now the setup I have with the MAF hack without the fly net. So I pulled up the last known, or the last flash or tune which I had running with the hack before. Then I had switched to the stock MAF again and had to retune it. So I'm on flash or tune 622. This is over the course of, I don't know, 3-4 years. So I've tuned or reflashed the ECU over 600 times. Doing logs, retuning, trying this, trying that, and this is how I keep track. Well flashed ECU so far, hasn't bricked, which is good. What I have open now is the latest flash with this for the stock MAF, which is number 622, and the last known good one I had with running the modded MAF 601. So I need to go back and reflash this one. However, I did some changes in the latest one which I want to carry over, and so now the question is, do I change the latest flash to the settings I had with the fuel from the older one, or do I change the older one to the new one? Good question, right? Not sure. Actually, sorry, this is the one, 611. This is the one we need to look at. So these two I need to compare. I just have some other ones open here just for comparison. I also always have the original tune open the original file. This is always interesting to see the variances according to the original one in percentage or in absolute values, just as a reference guide where I'm heading. So I always have this open and I can compare to it. So now I want to check what's the difference between the latest one and this one. So I need to see if I want to flash this one back with some modifications or adjust the latest one. I'm not sure yet, so we can go to the compare function here to compare two tunes. So I have the latest one and then the last one with the net, or this actually means without the net, and ST means stock, whatever. It's just, you know, so I can recognize my tunes, my flashes a little bit, what I've done as a kind of legend for me, what I've done for the most obvious things, so I can find it easier. So what we've changed, basically it's actually only 16 tables. So I had changed the decreasing TPS step size. I think this was for some rev hang testing I was doing. Not sure if I want to use the old setting or the new one. Let's have a look here what the differences are actually. Okay, step size. Actually, okay, I had increased the step size on the latest one to have it fall off the revs a little bit quicker. You can see here I turned the compare function off. You can see here the values are higher. I don't know. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. I'm not gonna change it back. We'll ignore this change. Alpha N, now this is an interesting table which a lot of people forget about, or when they mod their engine don't retune it. Apparently what I was told, or what I've read in some forums or in the various tuning groups, that even with Alpha N, this is like a kind of baseline table which the engine still uses. Even if you're not running Alpha N, it still keeps those values in check, basically as a reference, even though you are using a MAF and mass airflow. Still, this is as a baseline, so if these values are off, then also the car will run worse. So here I had adjusted, you can see here what I'm talking about. This is the one with the, let me close this one here. 611, that's the last known one with the net removed, and this is the stock one that now I had before. I had basically logged data in a histogram, or I logged data and opened it in MacLeod Viewer HD, made a histogram out of TPS and RPM, and filtered the values out to see where I'm landing. And you can see also here the difference is the load values are much lower with the stock MAF than with the Flynet, or with the mesh, Flynet mesh, whatever it's called, removed. So I had to lower it. Now these are the older values with the net removed, so I'm going to keep this the way it is. So I'm going to go by these values, which already indicate a higher load in some areas, really much higher, especially in this area, in the low area. So this is going to keep the old settings for now. I can go into how I, log data, analyze it in MacLeod Viewer HD, make histograms and all that stuff, but that's for another video. It's just going to get too long, too in-depth on certain things, and probably going to bore everyone to death. People don't watch it anyways till the end, so it's a waste of time. I may make another one where I actually analyze logs and how to filter values and get some info or tuning by logging. So this is the main one now, the fuel injection base map, where I know I had to retweak it a lot to get the long-term fuel trims back into check after switching the MAFs. This is the comparing the last one to this one, to the net removed with the stock, and you can see I had to pull the values up a lot, sometimes 10% to the old previous value with the stock MAF. In the end, it doesn't really change so much for SCFT tuning method. This is another video I may make, how to tune via the short-term fuel trim method to, log data, do a histogram, open MacLeod Viewer HD, make a histogram, and then see where your fuel trims are, and then reduce accordingly by percentage. No, I don't want to compare it to the original one. I want to compare it to this one, yeah. I'll have to go back to this one, and I think the reason why, okay, I was everything basing, of course, on this one, and then I went back to the stock one, and with the net removed, the load values were higher, especially in the low RPM or low load areas where the airflow may be skewed by removing the mesh, and then thus showing a higher load than it actually is. Now it would go to the next column and actually dump more fuel, but when you go back to the stock MAF and you have basically pulled fuel, it was going to tell you it's going to go lower again to the lower column, and you'll have to add fuel again. So this is an involved method. I'm going to go back to the old fuel injection map which I had before, so I'll reuse the Flash 611 and ignore this one for now. This one I pretty much had tweaked it. I can compare it to the original one also and go by a percentage difference. Yeah, sometimes in the lower I'm pulling 20. Okay, this is, you can't really compare it to the original one. It's only as a reference because I had installed larger injectors. So this is just as like a guide where it's heading or what is the difference across the board as a reference, more nothing else. We can ignore that. This ran pretty good, so I'm going to go with this one. So this is telling me I'll probably most likely go back with the old one. Then we have the open loop enrichment, which I just didn't really touch too much, so just some minor differences, I'll leave that alone. And then ignition timing, I did fiddle with the ignition timing quite a bit, and I did redo it, and I'm gonna go with the latest map for the ignition timing. I pulled out a lot of degrees, especially in the area where torque is highest. I reduced the ignition timing because I was getting some knock values. So I'm going to basically copy this map onto this one. I mean, if you compare it to stock, you can see here to the stock values of the original stock file. Here I had increased on the older one a lot of, or not a lot, up to 3-4 degrees, 5 degrees on this, in this area, higher load, mid RPM, and I was getting some knock on city highway speeds. So, and I was reading a little bit on ignition timing tuning, and it means, or on some, I watched a video where it says, or some expert, let's say, tuning expert was saying that in the area where you have most torque available, you shouldn't really advance the timing too much. Lower, the best is the lowest timing possible for best power and torque. So that's what I went by, and like I said, I was getting knock values, so I reduced it basically almost to stock in this area where I know this is the where the engine has the highest torque output, kept it somewhat stock, and then ramped it up again in the higher RPM. And I'm gonna go with that one for now, not this one. So what I'll have to do here, actually the only change, I'm just gonna copy the whole map over, copy, and then we're gonna paste it. Yep, it's the same now. Off. So we did that one. What else do we want to look at? The Vanos correction map. I don't know why I reduced this. Not sure. I think it was because of the Vanos on-off setting. I had changed it, but not exactly sure why. I had pulled some timing out in the correction factor. And let's compare it to the original one. Oh, that is actually original. Okay. So what did I do here? So I changed this one to have increased timing. Multiplication factor. So we can just leave it. Are you going to feel a difference? I don't know. Actually, I'm going to go back with the stock one. Yeah, with the latest one. I'm going to copy this map over. Copy map. Table. And paste. So let's put this one back to stock, no problem. I don't know what the hell I was doing here. Compensation for ignition timing. Oh, I had reduced. Okay, reduced the compensation to keep. Okay, and this one was still stock. I'll leave it stock. I don't know. This probably does nothing. That's not important. Okay, now the light throttle inputs for the Vanos. Here I definitely have to go back to a little bit. Yeah, okay. Since the load readings are higher, I had reduced, or I had to increase, let me put this way, the old one is increased compared to stock. Otherwise the car would, or the engine would kind of shudder on lower RPM when the Vanos is engaged too early. Yeah, okay, I had raised it here. This is compared to stock. I might take it down a little bit, scooch. That's like 10. This is when you engage the Vanos at low RPM too early. The car is kind of shuddering, feeling it's breaking up a little bit on light throttle. So I increase the thresholds for the load values when the Vanos should be engaged to get rid of this. Also, I did turn off the Vanos around 1700 RPM completely and turns back on around 2100. This is due to this, I don't know, this is this Vanos dip of death that is around 1900 RPM, where it just falls flat when Vanos is engaged for some reason in that spot. So the way around it is I basically just disengaged, turn Vanos off. It will not turn on in this RPM range, and then just turn back on or engage again around 2100 RPM. Actually, I can, no, I'll leave it here. This got rid of that Vanos dip or load dip which I was experiencing. I don't know what that is due to the camshafts, due to the exhaust headers. There's some harmonics in there which doesn't like this RPM with the Vanos engaged this early. Below here it does nothing, or above then it also works good. It's just this small range around 1900 2000 RPM. So we leave this now the way it is. Reduce this also a little bit. We'll see how that works. We'll have to do relogging and everything anyway. Then now we have the Vanos off. Heavy throttle, which I changed here. Yeah, one. This is by speed and RPM. This is MS41.2 I switched to. It works, you know, the heavy throttle application, not just by RPM, but by speed also. I'm going to add it up again here because I noticed this was off. It wouldn't engage between 40 and 4000 RPM, which is kind of stupid, which it should. So bring this back up to 1, so you have full engagement of Vanos in the speed area and RPM. And then basically I have the set point to turn off Vanos around 4500. I might go a little bit higher here, about 50 RPM actually on the old one, by looking at the load values in the log. We'll keep it like that. So this is the light throttle application. Sorry, the heavy throttle. Okay, I'll have to go back and raise this also 50, so it's the same. And idle speed. Changed the cam timing a little bit. In my other videos you can see it. I retarded the cam again at 4 degrees. So the idle is much smoother. I don't have to have such a high idle. I had to raise it up to like 880 with the intake camshaft installed straight up. So I had retarded it now again 4 degrees to get some more top end power. And it idles much smoother. The overlap is not so much. So I have set at 830. So basically I'm just gonna copy this whole map over and just paste it. Here we go. Yeah, same for AC on. We just copy this selection, copy, put it back. That's it. No, there's more. Holy shit. Change table. I live only 16. What else did I do? Ah, dashboard settings. Okay, this was against rev hang and stuff. I'll just, okay, this is minor changes. I'll just leave it. Leave the dashpot alone, and the decay limitation also a little bit more aggressive here. Ah, okay, well, we'll see how the old one feels like. Engine speed limiter. Okay, I changed the RPM. What did I change it to? I have it set at 7200. We'll raise it to. We want to all, you know, we need all the power we can get. High RPM, 7100. So 7100 is my RPM limit, and I think that's safe enough. I mean, you could probably rev it to 72. Ah, what the heck? Let's change it to 7000. You can safely rev those engines to 7200. That shouldn't be a problem. Just don't go much higher. I wouldn't go above 73, 75, 7500 max. But then actually it doesn't make any sense because there's no more power up there. So this is, I think, a good setting. Okay, the high load also. Okay, let's do 7200. Sounds like a round number. What else did I do? Okay, knock detection is the same. Okay. Alright, we'll leave it at that. Damn, 21 minutes. Who's gonna sit through this and watch me rant on about homebrew tuning, right? Okay, I want to save now. No, I don't want to. I want to save this one, 11, as a new one. We'll save this as 23. Vanos set point 4600. Yeah, okay. Alright, so that's it basically. Now I have to go back, retune, reflash it to the car, and then do some more test runs, log, and see if we can find any difference in the logs, how it feels. But that's then another episode eventually on the never-ending M52 MS41 BMW tuning saga.